Let the games begin.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is D, MKD58 Media, back again with another movie review. And today's movie review, we're going to be talking about a classic from 1987. It's a sci-fi action adventure, a little bit of horror film. I'm talking about 1987's Predator. All right, so Predator is right off the bat. This is one of my personal one of my personal favorite films. It just really doesn't have any flaws to it. There's nothing that I can think of that is actually wrong with this movie. If you actually like action movies and sci-fi and all that cool stuff. But some just a little bit of backstory on Predator. It's starring, as you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger, of course, Carl Weathers, Jesse Ventura, Bill Duke, Sonny Landham, I think is how you pronounce his last name. Kevin Peter Hall, the great Kevin Peter Hall, plays the Predator, the creature. Who else is in this? Shane Black is also in it, and I know I'm missing some people, but that's a big chunk of the main cast of this film. Now, at this point, I think everybody pretty much knows the general plot of Predator. I mean, the special team, special commando team type team, helicopters in with Carl Weathers, hired by Carl Weathers. Carl Weathers joins them. I think they're going in to just rescue some comrades from just a typical situation. But it actually turns out to be something a little bit different, and the Predator's in the jungle, and they basically end up having to survive the Predator's onslaught in the jungle, and the Predator's hunting them down one by one, pretty much. That's the simplified, pretty much, gist of the film. So I'm just going to basically talk about what I like about this film, because there really isn't anything that I don't like about it. I don't have any issues with it. As usual, I took some notes so I can make sure things are kind of organized as far as with what I'm talking about. But first off, let me just say, I already named off a big chunk of them. It's a great cast. Like, perfect casting across the board. They're all, interesting characters in their own way. At the very least, they fit into everything that's going on. And particularly the team, the Special Forces team, led by Arnold Schwarzenegger, who plays Duke. Particularly them, they have really good chemistry, and they're all believable as these kind of hardened, tough guys. All of their personas fit and make sense. Like none of the actors, none of their characters or personas in this film feel forced or like, no, that guy's not believable. Like, no, everybody's believable. Bill Duke's character, who always makes me laugh. Like he's kind of a little creepy on the edge type guy, but like ever since I saw the movie as a kid, like that character has always made me laugh. So. But he plays them well, and he's believable as that type character. Bill Duke is just a great kind of, actor in general. But Jesse Ventura, his character is believable. It's you don't feel like, oh, that's not really, that's not believable. Like his character's believable. Sonny, his character, Shane Black, plays a character whose personality and mannerisms and whole vibe kind of fits into who Shane Black is. Even though Shane Black, if I remember correctly, he wasn't even really supposed to be in the movie originally, but like since they had him do some writing, they decided to just put him in the movie as well. That's what I heard in some spots. I don't know how accurate all of that is, but either way, he still fits well within the cast. And obviously Arnold Schwarzenegger and Carl Weathers, physically they really lot the role and serve their parts as tough guys, but especially the acting portion. I just recently rewatched Predator, and Arnold Schwarzenegger's acting was kind of like surprisingly impressive, if that's the word. That might not even be the best word to use, but I was kind of like, I found myself saying, Arnold's really like selling this situation. You know, like obviously everything else surrounding him was top notch. The cinematography, music, sound design, special effects, and then obviously the supporting cast, the design of the creature, everything was in place. But Arnold also as well, his portrayal of Duke and just the emotions he conveyed and the intensity of the situation, like everything was really believable from him. I gotta, you know, think it over more, but I'm tempted to say, as strange as it seems for this type of movie, and how simple this movie actually is, it's I feel like Predator was one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's stronger acting parts. Yeah, I mean, that might sound goofy, but I feel kind of confident, relatively confident. I'm using all these not confident words, kinda and relatively. So, but no, I am confident in saying, like, I think this is one of his stronger acting parts, as far as just conveying the story and selling you what's happening on the screen. Like, when I watch this movie, sometimes there's roles where Arnold kind of makes you laugh a little bit. And it's not intentional. When I watched this movie, there was none of that. Like, I took him totally serious. All the fear was completely believable. All the struggle was believable. All the tough guy stuff was believable because it's Arnold. So yeah, Arnold, this was a really, really good movie from him. And I do, recognize, obviously there's some over the top, well, a lot of over the top machismo and macho stuff going on. But to me, that's intentional, and that's a part of the film, especially in a nostalgic sense. When you go back, and watch it and stuff, like all of that is supposed to be that way. Just your first shot of Arnold, he's in the back of the helicopter with the big stogie in his mouth, smoking the cigar with the aviator shades on, and just, extra obvious and almost stereotypical macho, tough military guy imagery and stuff. But it works really well with the film. It's really enjoyable. Like, watching Predator is kind of like playing an old Nintendo game, like the old NES, just back in the day, like playing Contra or one of those side-scrolling games. Like, it has that kind of vibe where it's old, but that shit is still fun. And really, even though it's old, I mean, we were noticing this the other night when we watched it. It still feels very modern. Like, it doesn't feel super dated. Like, it feels like the editing and the cutting, all the camera angles. Just a lot of it feels very modern. Like, if there's some movies, if you show them to a young person today, they just really wouldn't be able to get into them. That first Predator, I feel like you could show that to kids today and they would get into it and be locked in. Continuing with some of the, continuing with the positives, I mentioned the great cinematography. There's lots of great camera angles, lots of great cutting and editing in this. The jungle is super lush, super believable. They were basically on location when they filmed this, so everything is just I can't say I've seen just a ton of movies that take place in the jungle. I've seen a lot of movies, so I'm sure I've seen my fair share of jungle footage. And Predator, 1987, Predator made in 1987. I feel compelled to say that just to not get the Predator confused in there, but the original Predator, I feel like that has some of the best on camera, some of the best jungle footage, basically, as far as how the actual environment looks. Like, it's very lush. And I remember the director or somebody involved in the making saying they actually had to cut back some of the vegetation because it's actually so thick, like a real jungle, which is where they were. Is so thick that you can't actually just film straight forward and see clearly stuff that's going on. Like, it's super thick, there's just brush and leaves and vines and creatures and activity, and so they actually had to kind of do a little bit of landscaping and a little bit to just clear out a little bit of area so you could see further and film further and actually film stuff, have a place where people can stand and do stuff. So they were there, and you can tell by the footage, like, it looks really good. Like, it's similar footage to similar quality of jungle footage in terms of what the environment looks like to what you would see on like a National Geographic or Discovery Channel program talking about, you know, snakes in the jungle or something. So the cinematography is really great. The storytelling in this it's super simple, and because of how simple the story is, I think that lends itself to being so good, to being like pretty much perfect storytelling because of the simplicity of it. I mean, the more you try to do a complex story, that's usually a lot of movies when they fuck. That's usually where they mess up the. You can say I was trying to avoid using profanity there, but that's usually where they mess up a lot of times in certain movies when it comes to storytelling, is they try to do too much and they make the story gets too complicated and just too convoluted, just all that type of stuff, and they can't really find their way back out of it to make it all wrap up and make sense. You don't even have to worry about that with the storytelling of this, because it's such a just clear, straightforward to storytelling, almost a classic story in a way, as in terms of just what the pitfalls and the perils and everything. I know I've heard people say that this movie, if it didn't have any dialogue, as far as it was almost a silent film, if it didn't have any dialogue and it was like almost like a silent film, you could still pretty much tell exactly what all was going on. And I heard that prior to even doing this rewatch. I've seen Predator just tons of times since I was a kid, on till today. I just recently watched it a couple days ago, and so prior to that rewatching, I had heard that quote, the person talking about how this could be a silent film and you'd still get it. And upon rewatching it, that's very, very true. Just it's visually, there's lots of moments of just straight silence where it's just footage. You know, the camera's just rolling and it's just straight up, the visuals are telling the story and you're waiting for something to happen. You're filled with tension. Now this is more so upon maybe more initial viewings. I've seen it so much where obviously there's no surprises, no spoilers or anything for me. I know what happens. I know when the character's going to reveal it, when the creature's going to reveal itself, and who's going to die when. So there's none of that type of true tension for me, that tension of the unknown. But you can still, even if you're familiar with the film, feel the tension that's created within the editing and the camera work and the storytelling of this film. So you feel it even if you already know what's going to happen, which most people do because most people have seen the film. Love the score, love the musical score. The score was very just fitting for the setting of the film, very kind of just jungle military. That's pretty much how you could describe the main score for this movie. It's just basically you take the jungle over here, military type shit over here, and just bring it together, and that's what it sounds like. And it works well for this film, and works to build the tension. There's a drum portion of the score in different parts that they use as a tension building kind of thing in the suspense building method, and it works really well. Now let me specifically talk about the Predator, the creature. This was for a long time, and perhaps still is. I kind of hinted at some of this in my Alien 3 review or whatever, but for a long time the Predator was my favorite kind of on-screen alien type creature. And it might still be there. I've been watching the Alien movies more so lately, so I've grown to develop a really good appreciation for the alien creature. But I haven't been able, I kind of hinted that I was about to let the alien creature take the crown with the last video I did. But the Predator, upon rewatching Predator, yeah, I still like that creature. So I'm going to let him be in that. He can still sit in that #1 spot, but you know, the xenomorph from the Alien movies is kind of like right there. It's like 1A and 1B. But this, specifically the creature design for the Predator in this first original Predator, still a classic design. I think it's still a unique creature in that Kevin Peter Hall plays the Predator in this movie. And I can't remember. I think he plays the Predator he might play the Predator in the second one. Maybe he doesn't, because there's at one point there's multiple Predators towards the end of the second one. I can't remember if Kevin Peter Hall is in the second one or not, but I know for sure Kevin Peter Hall is the Predator in the first one. And he's a 7, like I think he's like 7'2" or something, but he's this 7'2" ballerina, which to me explains why the Predator was able to kind of look the way he did when he moved. Like the Predator always has moved with a kind of large gracefulness. Like it's always looked like a very large kind of, you know, obviously muscular being, but that has a level of agility and grace that's abnormal for somebody that size. Like if you know you're 7'2", you're essentially the size of Shaq. You know, but the Predator is like leaping around doing pretty much, you know, ninja-esque maneuvers or whatever. And so this guy, Kevin Peter Hall, is essentially, you know, when you consider the fact he's a 7'2" ballerina, like that type of combination of features is, you're not going to get that in a lot of spots. So that's why the Predator always looked so unique in its movements to me. Like it always looked very just like man, I mean, like, dang, this dude, this thing is like big as hell, but it's moving very swiftly, and you know, like it's almost like you could tell it was a large, you know, a large creature in terms of height, but it moved very, you know, very quickly and with a lot of agility, very smooth movements, you know, able to land softly even with all that mass and weight, and it looks very believable on camera, very feasible and tangible, practical. So yeah, just he did a great job with just the physical performance of that character. But as far as just the look of the character, the design of the prosthetics and the creature itself, I know, if I remember correctly, Stan Winston did the character with some input from James Cameron. Like Stan Winston and James Cameron were on a plane, and Stan Winston was trying to showing James Cameron the creature, and James Cameron suggested the face, like how the Predator looks with the face plate off, just the whatever you call that stuff. How his face looked almost like he had a mouth almost like the mouth that the vampire creatures had in Blade 2. You know what I'm talking about. If you've seen Blade 2, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, that mouth that just, like, you know, that opens up or whatever. I don't want to say the word, the something face. I know I swear a little bit on this channel, but I am trying to kind of not get too crazy with it. But yeah, so James Cameron had some input from what I understand on it. But basically, Stan Winston designed this creature. Great design. It wasn't always going to be, this type of design. It was actually going to be this other design. And I remember seeing like a little bit about that, and I'm really glad that they came up with something different, because that other design was not what it feels like. It would have been a completely different movie. But this design is still a classic creature design. And then, obviously in more, as the newer Predator movies and the sequels and all that type of stuff, they kind of expand upon the design, add more variation, because there's different types of predators, or Yautja, or I don't know if that's how you pronounce their real name, but there's different types of them and different levels and stuff like that. So obviously the design look has had some variations added to it over time, but just that original Predator from the first one always looked great to me. It was always cool, always just had a mystique about it. And yeah. Now this movie was directed by the same guy that directed Die Hard. I think John McTiernan. Let me make sure, because that feels wrong if I don't pronounce his name right. I know that it's John McTiernan, ain't it? John McTiernan was the director. I don't know why. I only had to look it up to make sure I was getting the pronunciation right. I knew who directed the movie. I didn't want to fuck up the pronunciation, because I tend to do that. So, but as I said, this is basically a flawless film. I'm gonna give you my score right now before I talk just a little bit more about some things, and then I'll close it out. But my score for Predator, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. And I'm going 9 out of 10 because, I don't want to say 10 out of 10 just yet. I don't think I've said 10 out of 10 for anything yet. I believe. Yeah, I don't think I've given a 10 out of 10 to any movie yet as far as review on this channel. So I'm gonna hold off on giving this a perfect score because I know I said it was essentially flawless. There could be some things I could talk about probably in terms of flaws, like in terms of like some little things, maybe. But I have to rack my mind to think of them, so I can't, I'm not gonna even try to give you any of that right now because I can't even think of it. So that's why I say it's pretty much a flawless movie, because I just can't think of an actual issue with this if you're into these type of action films. I mean, there's some people that just aren't going to like Arnold Schwarzenegger, period, just because they think all of that type of shit is goofy. Like, they think that whole kind of macho 80s action is already not worthy just because of what it is, already. So, if you're like that, you can find more to fault with this movie. I mean, there are some ridiculous kind of things if you're really talking about from the perspective of, true military tactics. There's a few things that Arnold does where it's like, obviously maybe a real soldier in that situation wouldn't necessarily do that. There's a few things which I don't know for sure, but there is some stuff where you're kind of like, even if you have no armed forces experience, there are a few things that are kind of might look peculiar to you or whatever, in terms of, do they really do stuff like that, or would they really do that in that situation, or would he really do that? But I mean, that's movies, that's Hollywood, you know what I mean? Everything is kind of Hollywooded up, even the stuff that's super realistic. I will say there's corny, or I shouldn't say corny, there's cheesy one-liners in this movie, but in this type of film, I like that. It's funny, and I grew up with it. I remember when I was a kid, there was one time, one of the many viewings that I've had of this film, it was me, my dad, I think my sister for sure was there, I think my grandmother might have been there. I know my mom was in the same room, but we were watching Predator. And my dad would just make jokes about the one-liners, and, when Arnold throws the knife and, sticks the guy, and, telling him, stick around and all that type of stuff. I don't even try to do an Arnold impression or whatever. Most of the time I don't. I might do one eventually on this channel, but yeah, the stick around joke and what was his name? Whoever Bill Duke's character, I can't think of the guy's name, but Bill Duke's character, he really had us cracking up, just how he was trying his hardest to be spooky. Like he was really laying it on thick. So excuse me, a lot of that stuff was just funny. Like a lot of that cheesy 80s action stuff, like, that's not a negative to me. That fits into the mold of what's supposed to be happening with this kind of movie. I enjoy it in this scenario. So yeah, 9 out of 10 for this movie. Great action, great acting. All the characters serve a purpose. So this is a really top-notch ensemble performance as far as serving the story and keeping you engaged. It's a low-key slasher film. Like this movie has like 3 different levels to it in terms of type of film. Like, it's a type of movie, it's actually the type of movie where if you came in, depending on what point in the movie you walk in, like say you walked in late to a theater, you would have a different idea of what type of movie it was. Like if you started watching it at the very beginning, you would go in without knowing anything about this movie. You'd go in thinking it's just like some sort of Commando, Rambo, just traditional, go in with the big guns, killing bad guys in the jungle, 80s war type action movie, right? But then if you came in like, say, the middle part of the movie, the second act or whatever, then you'd think you were watching like a slasher almost. But then if something happened where for some odd reason you didn't walk into the movie theater until the third act of the film, or the end of the film, the last, maybe, my timing is probably off, but the last maybe 20 minutes of the film, maybe, or something like that, you would you would think maybe, or certain just section of the film, you'd be okay, I'm watching a creature feature / sci-fi type thing. There's 3 different kind of portions to this film, but it all makes sense, but it also adds a lot of variety for how simple it is. It's just a weird mix of how it's simple, but there's still a lot of variety actually here to what the movie is doing, and some of the looks it gives you. So I really like that. Yeah, it's a movie that as time goes on and I get older and just watch more movies and just, you know, learn more about movies. 'Cause I'll be honest, I got a lot to learn and still kind of learn as far as about different things in film in general. You know, I'm a super novice in terms of trying to analyze a movie. I'm used to just kind of watching stuff, and I definitely haven't seen close to everything. A lot of classic films I haven't seen, so you know, I always will admit I'm not the best judge of these things, and I'm just talking about movies that I like and just how I feel about them, or not even movies that I've always liked, but just movies that I've seen and how I feel about them and my initial thoughts. I don't claim to be any type of expert about this stuff, but yeah, but it really does its job very well, very efficiently. This is a really good movie, and I gotta give it that kind of praise because it's a long-time favorite. It's very entertaining, has minimal flaws, if any, and I just watched it really recently, so, and all the things I've always thought about it really ring true. It stood the test of time, so I gotta give it its props and its praise or whatever. So anyways, Predator, 1987, the original Predator. I'm giving that a 9 out of 10. Lots of memorable lines, lots of memorable moments. You know, I ain't got time to bleed. Stick around. Get to the chopper. Ugly motherfucker. All kinds of stuff going on with that movie. So yeah, next, I'm not gonna even say next, but eventually I gotta get to my Predator and Alien discussion. Not in intentionally avoiding the Alien versus Predator movies. That won't have anything to do with the discussion for me, unless I so happen to stumble into rewatching them or something in between time or whatever. But I actually just want to talk about the creatures themselves, specifically the Predator 1, the main Predator from Predator 1, and the main alien from Alien 1, or from Alien. And then you can sprinkle in when you talk about how, you know, Predator 2, where there ended up being multiple predators, and then, you know, Alien, obviously Aliens, where there's multiples and stuff like that. But basically the main initial iconic creatures from those franchises, I kind of want to take a look at them more as far as comparing them, and maybe actually try to come to some definitive conclusion for how I personally feel about which is the better creature and why. So but yeah, that's it for this video. Predator 1987, 9 out of 10. If you haven't seen it, you definitely gotta see it. If you have seen it, then you already know the just classic material that it is. If you're into sci-fi action and horror and all that good stuff. So all right, you guys, thanks for watching. Got more video. I got videos I'm about to film right now. I got some more videos I gotta do. So check for those. Like, comment, subscribe. All right.